Hello everyone. Tonight we're going to dive deep into a time when survival wasn't exactly a sign of luck. Yet another historical irony, you know? You wake up in a dark, stuffy room, the kind of place where time seems to be too lazy to pass. Outside, the sound of bells rings slowly, as if to let you know that the world has already left and they forgot to tell you. The air smells of vinegar, wet wood, and something sweet in the background, maybe dried flowers or bodies. You prefer not to investigate. Outside, everything is too quiet, as if the city has held its breath. But calm down before we sink into this fragrant nightmare. Do us a favor. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, but only if you really enjoy this kind of bizarre and relaxing stuff, and comment where you're watching from and what time it is. It'll be fun to see who's trying to sleep at 3 in the morning, just like you. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan to create that soft background sound, and let's take tonight's journey together. You don't know the exact day or the year, but you know you're alive, just barely. The plague came the way bad things do, without ceremony, without logic. In a few weeks everything changed. People disappeared or changed shape, silent, swollen, with eyes that apologize for existing. Your body still responds well. A little sluggish perhaps, but who wouldn't when the world stinks of burnt grass and fear? You walk down a narrow hallway. The floorboards creak, complicit. A flickering candle lights the way, but the flame wavers, as if it itself is exhausted. No one else has woken you up. No one needs to. Time has lost its meaning, and you no longer wait for the sunrise. You just hope it doesn't bring a new round of fever, delirium, and that distant look that others began to cultivate before disappearing. On the streets, the world seems painted in shades of brown and grey. There are no birds, no dogs, just the echo of your own footsteps. You see a cat crossing the street quickly, as if it knew too much, and maybe it does. Animals, they say, sense things, and historically speaking, they are usually right. You walk through a half-open door. Inside, what's left of a family, the father dead, the mother praying, the child staring at you with eyes so big it seems like it wants to escape through them. You look away. There's nothing you can do, and the last thing you expect from a survivor is heroism. Heroism kills. Living requires selfishness and luck, and you have a bit of both. In the Middle Ages, it was believed that the air was to blame. The miasma. Bad smells meant illness. That's why the streets are covered in herbs and cloths soaked in vinegar. In fact, there's a cloth bag hanging around your neck with thyme, rosemary, and a pinch of despair. You sniff it every now and then, pretending it helps. Historians still debate whether this type of aromatic protection served any purpose or simply gave death a more pleasant scent. You feel hungry, but the idea of food seems out of place. Nothing tastes good anymore except earth. The bread is hard, the water smells like wood, and the soup, if you're lucky, comes with more twigs than vegetables. But you eat whenever you can. After all, the only luxury of the season is to keep chewing when everyone else has been buried. You find a note pinned to the wall. Do not enter without knocking. The plague is within. You knock anyway. No one answers. Of course. But something, and you want to follow the rule, just to keep some order in the chaos, or just to feel less alone. Oh, and what about the smell of vinegar? It's become a fad, almost a symbol. Everything is washed with vinegar. Clothes, walls, the bodies of the dead. As if vinegar could defeat death with acidity. You've even tried bathing your feet in it. It doesn't help, but at least it scares away the rats for 5 minutes. Remember that sweet smell from before? Now you discover it came from dried flowers left in vases, an attempt to keep beauty inside the house. It almost works, but soon reality invades again. The sound of a cart, wood banging, and the characteristic creak of yet another body being collected. It's almost poetic, almost. You sit on a step and watch. There is no rush. No one has any commitments. Time has stopped, stuck in a calendar that is no longer valid. The bell rings again, a drawn-out sound, as if even it has grown tired of announcing the end. Fun fact of the day. In some cities it was believed that bells warded off the plague, and so they rang, over and over again, a symphony of fear and hope, and maybe, just maybe, an ideal soundtrack for your new medieval insomnia. A breeze passes, weak but real. And you are grateful for it. Not for bringing freshness, Gus, that is already a luxury, but for confirming that the world still moves, even if slowly, even if crookedly. The streets are still dark, but there is something strange in the air. The silence is becoming increasingly heavy, and you realize that perhaps you have become accustomed to it. There is no longer the sound of voices or children's laughter, and the noise of carts seems to come from far away, as if the city had swallowed everything that made it alive. Now what remains are the echoes of a time that no longer makes sense. And fear, of course. The fear that spreads like a shadow, clinging to you, not letting go. You walk a few more streets. The facades of the houses are slowly crumbling, and many of them look like something that no longer cares. The cold wind makes the wooden planks of the buildings creak, and you feel a chill down your spine. Something in those houses seems to be lurking. Death is so close that it is present in every corner, in every detail. Maybe it is just another part of the landscape now, as natural as the sky or the earth or the rats you see running from one side to the other. The strangest thing is that, even with all this, there are still those who try to keep up appearances. Some survivors, the few that remain, still place flowers in their windows as if they wanted to cheat death with a little beauty. Maybe it was a way of telling the world, we are here, resisting. But you know it won't last long. The world is collapsing, and sooner or later everyone will succumb. The plague is relentless, and people, although they try to ignore it, know it. No one talks about it openly, but everyone knows that, as the bell tolls incessantly, the end is coming. You walk through the deserted streets and pass by a square. Here things are a little different. The square, which used to be a place to meet and exchange news, is now filled with an oppressive silence. The ground, once covered in grass and flowers, is now covered in dust and the remains of things that no longer have any meaning. In a corner, a woman sits alone, staring into space. Her expression is one of exhaustion, but also of resignation. What else is there to do but wait? She seems to see you, but her eyes are not really focused on you. Perhaps they are far away, playing what is left of a world that no longer exists. Or perhaps she only sees her own pain. Who knows? You hesitate, but you keep going. There is no reason to stop. No one is waiting for you. No one will ask you what you did or what you are going to do. Loneliness, although uncomfortable, ends up being a relief. It protects you. When you are alone, no one expects anything from you. And if there are no expectations, there is no disappointment. In a way, this gives you freedom. The freedom to be nothing, to do nothing and just continue existing. The bells ring again. The city still remembers itself. The question is there anything left worth saving? You have no answers, but you know the sound of the bell will continue. It cares not for the living or the dead. It will continue until the city is gone, until it becomes a distant memory. You have seen death, and it inevitably comes to everyone. No matter how far you run, it will always find its way. But for now, you're still here, and that for some reason gives you some kind of comfort. The idea that, despite everything, you still have time. Time to try to understand what happened. Time to try to understand why the world has become a shadow of its former self. But that understanding comes at a price. The price of loneliness. The price of watching the people around you disappear and yet still walking. You're alone, but at the same time you've never been so surrounded by others. Others who, like you, are simply trying to move forward, one step at a time, without knowing where they're going. You pass an old church, its wooden doors cracked and creaking in the wind. Inside, an old candle is lit, trembling in the draught that seeps through the cracks. What was once a place of prayer is now merely a refuge for the lost. The candles are a comfort, and that is what you do. You enter the church, go to the altar and kneel. Not to pray because the words no longer come, but to feel something. To feel that perhaps for a moment the world has some kind of meaning. Here the silence is profound, but there is a kind of peace in it. It is not a peace that comes from faith, but from acceptance. Acceptance that, like everything else, even the church is dying. But for now it still exists, and for now you are still here. You stand up, looking once more at the remains of the church. There is no faith here anymore, just ruins and ashes. But somewhere you feel that maybe you don't need faith to survive. Maybe the simple fact of existing is enough. The simple fact of keeping going. Because in the end, what matters is not understanding what happened, but keeping going. Even without knowing where to. You leave the church and continue your walk through the streets. The smell of vinegar and wood lingers in the air, a constant reminder that the world is no longer what it used to be. But for now, you keep going, because going is the only thing left. And that's what you do, one step at a time. Historians still debate whether the plague was the end of faith, or just a chapter in a long cycle of death and rebirth. Some believe the plague represented the end of trust in the divine. Others say it was a desperate attempt to reconnect man with heaven. The fact is, it doesn't matter to you anymore. It doesn't matter what historians say. What matters is what you feel now. The silence of the city, the loneliness that surrounds you, and the simple act of following without question. The wind is now blowing harder, and you feel the cold breeze against your skin cutting through the silence in an impertinent way. The streets, always dark, now seem more oppressive, as if they were closing in around you. What was once a lively city full of sounds and movement is now immersed in a deathly stillness, where every breath seems to echo. The smell of vinegar and burning wood is still in the air, like a constant reminder that death is in no hurry, but spreads with the certainty that it will reach everyone. What you don't realize, however, is what is forming inside you. With each step, something changes, but you can't identify what. You walk through a few more streets, now emptier than ever. There are no children throwing stones, no vendors shouting their wares, no laughter or even screams. Only the sound of the wind, the creaking of wooden doors that will never be opened again, and the occasional sound of a cart passing by, transporting a body or some other useless item for the moment. You pass a house that was probably once a cheerful place. The windows are still open, but the wood is cracked. Inside you can see some scattered furniture covered in dust, and even a fallen table with some crumpled papers. There, in the corner, a plate of food lies untouched, as if it had been left there in the haste of someone who knew the end was coming. No one is left to finish what was left behind. The world has become a place of rapid passages. There is no longer room for the tranquility of everyday life. You realize, without realizing it, that your stomach is empty. Not that you are hungry, in the usual sense of the word. Hunger at this point is no longer a desire. It is a feeling that your body needs something, but you don't know what exactly. Maybe it is the hunger for answers, for understanding, for something that still makes sense. But the answers are as distant as the horizon that you can no longer see. And all you can do is keep moving forward, like everyone else does. As if the simple fact of walking was the only thing that still made sense. What you don't realize is how your mind has started to get used to the idea that the world as we knew it is fading away. Before you tried to fight it, trying to understand what happened and what could be done to prevent the worst. But now you no longer feel that urgency. The pain of living in a city that is slowly falling apart and dying is no longer something that bothers you in the same way. You have learned to accept it, to accept that death is present on every corner, in every person, and that deep down, everyone is just waiting for the moment when they will be called. As you walk further away, from the square you see some people in front of a house. They are sitting on the ground, their faces pale and their hands folded in their laps, as if they are waiting for something or someone. You don't know if they are praying, or if they are simply trying to convince themselves that there is still something worth waiting for. The strangest thing is that when you look at them, you no longer feel anger or sadness. There is no room for those feelings anymore. Only a silent understanding that they are as lost as you are, and in a way you share the same fate. They, like you, are just trying to survive what is left. You take a deep breath, the cold air filling your lungs, and decide to continue. There is no rush. Time, like everything else, seems to have lost its meaning. Sometimes you find yourself thinking about what you could have done differently, but you soon realize that it is useless. The plague does not choose the weak or the strong. It simply happens, it arrives, and those who resist are only the lucky ones. And maybe deep down, what you are really doing is hoping that luck, however unlikely it may be, will continue to be on your side. The path ahead is deserted, but you follow it without hesitation. Somewhere in the distance you hear the sound of a bell. It seems to come from an uncertain direction, as if calling everyone, as if no one is truly safe. You wonder if it is a call for yet another religious ceremony, yet another attempt to soothe lost souls. But what bothers you most is the fact that, even when life is falling apart around you, religiosity, the need to find some purpose or meaning, still persists. Man, perhaps, always needs to believe that there is something beyond death. And when death is so close, this belief becomes the last anchor for those who try to resist. You pass a few more houses, a few more streets, and the landscape becomes increasingly unrecognizable. The trees, once green and imposing, are now bare, like skeletons of something that lived long ago. The stones of the sidewalks are broken, and the smell of smoke from some distant fire begins to infiltrate the air. There are no more fruit trees, no gardens full of flowers. What was once beauty is now only desolation. And yet, you walk without a clear goal, without a specific reason for going anywhere. But you keep going, because deep down, you know that this is the only thing you can still do. And maybe deep down, this is the only thing that really matters. Living one day at a time, trying to stay away from the plague, away from the death that is lurking around, but without forgetting that at any moment the end could come. You don't know when or how, but you know it will come. Historians still debate whether people survived the plague through sheer willpower or pure luck. Some say it was a combination of both. Others believe that death doesn't choose, it just happens. However, one thing is certain, survivors like you have stories to tell. But perhaps in the end all stories are the same. Stories of loss, of fear, and of waiting. The wind has now calmed down a bit, but the city, as if recovering from a deep sigh, still feels heavy. The lingering smell of vinegar in the air seems to intensify with every step. The sun is low on the horizon, like a yellowish ball that tries, but fails, to dispel the fog of despair that spreads across the city. What could once be called late afternoon now has a somber tone. The sky is pale, a distant memory of what used to be vibrant. But no one seems to notice that. Everyone is too busy trying to just carry on, trying to maintain some form of normalcy in a world that has already lost its way. You start to notice more details as you make your way through the empty streets. The edge of a broken window, the sound of a door creaking in the distance, the touch of something that is instinctively familiar, but that you can't quite place. These little things start to add up, creating a disjointed portrait of a place that was once more than that. The city was once a bustling metropolis, full of stories of people rushing about their daily lives, full of hopes, plans, and ambitions. Now all you see are the shadows of those people, etched into the memory of the walls, the rusted doors and the traces left behind by the plague. You continue your walk, without a clear direction, but with a tacit purpose to go all the way. There is no rush. Time has lost its meaning, but the only thing that has remained constant is the sound of passing carts. They come and go, carrying more bodies, more lives that are gone. But what bothers you is not the sight of bodies piled up, but the fact that no one really cries anymore. There are no more regrets. There are no more prayers for the dead. Just a resignation that permeates everything. The time for regret is over. Now all that remains is the silent task of surviving, living without any purpose other than the simple act of continuing to breathe. As you pass through a square, you see a group of people sitting, probably waiting for something. Maybe death, maybe a solution, but the fact is that they don't seem to be waiting for anything specific. They are the survivors, those who still carry the burden of the past and the weight of doubt. They look at each other in silence, as if they had already exhausted all possible words. When someone moves, it is almost out of fear of breaking what remains of what was once an active life. The plague has not only taken away people's health, but also the sparkle in their eyes. There is no longer that fire of wanting something, of wishing that tomorrow will bring something new. The only thing people want now is for the night to pass without more deaths, without more losses, which, deep down, is a very small wish for a world that has been torn apart. But the worst part of all is when you realize that little by little, you too have begun to lose your spark. Perhaps fear has crept into you so slowly that it has now become part of your very essence. What were once small worries have now become your only realities. The idea of a future has faded, and the only thought that occupies your mind is, what happens when there is no more hope? What happens when the last stars in the sky have gone out and darkness takes over everything? You know that if you keep thinking like this, you'll lose more than just your strength. You'll lose your reason to keep going. But at the same time, that's the only thing you know how to do now. Keep walking, despite everything. You try to focus on the sound of your own footsteps, the sound of something that's still yours. But no matter how hard you try to focus on that, the emptiness around you keeps expanding. There are no more references, no more landmarks. The city, once familiar, is now a jumble of places you've seen before, but that now seem unrealistically distant, as if they were scenes from a never-ending nightmare. As you walk through the city, you wonder what is really left of what once was, and most importantly, what can be rebuilt, if anything can. The plague took away things that had value. Life, work, hope. All these concepts seem to disappear like water going down a drain. All that remains are the memories of something gone and an uncertain future. But it's curious. Some people keep trying. They try to make sense of what you no longer have. Maybe because the simple act of trying is all that keeps them alive. Maybe it's what keeps you alive too, without you knowing it. To try. Still trying to have some form of control in a world where nothing seems to be manageable. You pass an old building, something that might once have been a market or a trading house, but is now just an abandoned skeleton. For a moment, you feel like you could go inside, look for something, anything that still has value. But as you look into the dark, dusty entrance, you realize that there is nothing left to be found. There is no more food, no more water, nothing left that could be useful. All that remains is the memory of how things used to be, a memory that, like the walls of the city, is slowly disintegrating. Still, you carry on. And maybe, even with all that's been lost, carrying on is the only thing that still has any meaning. Because in the end, carrying on is all you can do, and maybe that alone is enough. Historians still debate human resilience in the face of disaster. Some believe the human spirit is unbreakable, while others suggest resilience is not a matter of strength, but of adaptation. The fact is, no matter what you call this resilience, it manifests itself in unexpected ways. Ultimately, all survivors ask the same question: what remains when life as we know it no longer exists? And perhaps that answer is the mystery of survival itself. You have already lost track of time, and this is something you have accepted without questioning it. The concept of days and nights, of hours and minutes, has become a luxury that you can no longer afford. What was once a routine is now just a succession of disconnected moments in which the only constant is emptiness. The daylight, now pale and lifeless, only serves as a reminder that night, the one that brings the most uncertainty, is coming. But you are in no hurry to get there. What bothers you the most is that as the days go by, you begin to understand what it meant to live in a truly mechanized way. Now, everything in you seems to move on impulse. You eat when you need to. You walk when you need to. You breathe when you can. The city, once full of movement and sounds, is now immersed in a silence that oppresses you, a dense stillness, as if space itself had been swallowed up by absence. The deserted streets seem endless, like a labyrinth of memories and empty spaces. Sometimes you find yourself standing on a corner, not knowing which direction to go, and that, in a way, is even comforting. There is no longer the need to make important decisions, to try to determine which path is the right one. Each step is just another, the same as all the others you have already taken. What matters is not the direction, but the act of following, simply following. You vaguely remember the old days when the city streets were full of life and people moved with clear purpose. Maybe it was just an illusion, a fantasy that things were okay because everyone pretended they were. Or maybe the rhythm of life really was clearer, more direct. But what you know now is that the speed with which everything fell apart was as swift as a breath of wind, and suddenly everything you knew was erased without even a chance to say goodbye. The strangest thing is that with all this happening around you, you still find yourself having small moments of reflection, small but intense. Sometimes you find yourself looking at a piece of broken glass on the street, and for a moment, the reflection you see is not your face, but the face of someone who has gone before, perhaps a memory of a lost time. Other times you look at a crumbling wall and see in it the same reflection of your own life, something that collapses without you having the power to stop it. And yet, you keep going, always going. Your steps grow heavier. Each movement feels more tiring than the last. The air feels thicker, and the pressure in your chest increases with each breath. But you know you can't stop, not now. No matter how much your mind and body want to give up, you have to keep going. Life goes on, or at least that's what you force yourself to believe. And that's why you keep moving forward, one step at a time. You pass a brick house, its facade cracked and cracked, but somehow it still stands. A ray of hope, perhaps, or a symbol of resistance, a resistance that you begin to admire, not for its strength, but for its persistence. The houses, the buildings, even the broken trees, all seem to be a disfigured version of what they used to be. And you, with your own thoughts, with your own broken feelings, begin to realize that you are as disfigured as the places you pass. Yet there is a small part of you that insists on seeing beauty in it. A beauty in survival. Even if survival is a silent struggle without glory or fanfare. Maybe you, like this house, have become stronger because of the destruction. Maybe the destruction, as painful as it is, has given way to something new to be born. A new kind of resistance, a new way of existing, one that no longer depends on a past, that no longer exists. You walk through the market, now empty and gloomy. The shelves are empty, and all that remains are the remains of a trade that will no longer exist. The smell of something old and rotting permeates the air, but you no longer feel repulsion. Instead, you feel a kind of understanding. The market, like the city, has been consumed by what time has brought. There is no more room for the things that were once important, and now emptiness seems to take the place of what was essential. But there is no regret. There is only acceptance. In a corner of the square, you see a man alone, lying against a wall, his eyes closed. He doesn't look dead, but he doesn't look alive either. He's somewhere in between, perhaps, where the boundaries of existence and death become irrelevant. There's no longer any separation between what's alive and what's no longer alive. What's left is a thin line, an invisible line that connects everything to a reality you can no longer fully comprehend. You approach him, but as you look into his face, you feel there is no need to wake him. Not now. The man, like you, seems to be at peace with what is left of the world. He has accepted his condition, and so have you. Death is just lurking, and no one seems to care anymore. Time no longer has the urgency it once did. The future, once full of promise and possibility, is now a distant abstraction. The only thing that truly matters is the present. And for now, silence is what guides you. Historians are still trying to understand the relationship between the survivors and the ruined city. Some speak of an adaptation to chaos, an innate ability to rebuild what has been destroyed. Others believe that deep down, there is a spiritual resilience that transcends physical destruction. But the truth is that regardless of the explanations, the survivors live in a limbo between what was and what can no longer be. The sky slowly begins to darken. The sun, previously pale, hides behind the clouds, and the first stars begin to shine timidly, as if they were still afraid to appear in what remains of a shattered world. The wind, which was once sharp, now seems milder, but it still carries with it that constant smell of burnt wood and vinegar, like an echo of what was lost. And somehow the silence that accompanies the arrival of night brings relief. The city, as it becomes darker, seems to become more serene, more peaceful. Perhaps it is the stillness of death that brings this kind of calm. You, however, do not feel at peace. Even in the silence of the night, emptiness still fills you. The fear of what may yet happen, or of what will not happen, is a constant presence. Perhaps it is the fear that death, when it finally comes, will not bring the tranquility that everyone seems to seek. Perhaps it is the fear that in the end, death will no longer be an end, but merely a continuation of a meaningless existence. You walk down the streets, your footsteps echoing on the empty sidewalk. And you wonder if there will be anything more after this. Will the plague go away? Will the dead finally find rest? Or will they, like so many things, also be trapped in a cycle that never ends? It's a question that has no answer, but that persists, like the echo of a muffled scream. As you walk, your eyes fall on one building in particular. It looms before you, its walls cracked and its structure compromised, but somehow still intact. You approach it, curious, before it would probably be just another forgotten building, but something about this building draws you in. There's something about it that catches your eye. You don't know what it is, but it's as if there's an untold story waiting to be discovered there. When you reach the door, it is ajar, as if inviting you in. You hesitate. There is a feeling that you shouldn't be there, that there is something that should remain silent. But at the same time, you feel that this place, this building, is a key to something you need to understand, something you need to see, even if you don't know what it is. You push open the door slowly. The sound of metal grinding against wood is loud, a sound that seems to cut through the stillness of the night. Inside, the air is thicker, as if it had been closed for a long time. The smell of mold and dust is strong, but there is something familiar about it, something that reminds you of a simpler time. When you look around, you realize that you're in some kind of warehouse, but it is different from any other you have seen. There are no empty shelves or abandoned crates. Instead, objects are scattered all over the floor. Books, papers, notebooks, melted candles, and pieces of metal. Each item seems to have been set aside in a silent rush, as if someone had left quickly, not knowing that they would not return. What catches your attention the most, however, is a table in the center of the room. It is covered in papers, many, of them crumpled or torn, but still a certain order seems to have been established there. You approach and begin to look at the papers, trying to understand what is written. They are notes, drafts, fragments of something much larger. Some words are illegible, but others, when you manage to decipher them, speak of plans and strategies of survival, of hope. They are words that somehow make you feel that, for a brief moment, there is still a fight for life going on. Not a physical fight, but a fight for memory, for the preservation of what is left. You pick up one of the notebooks and start leafing through it. There are drawings there, sketches of people, places, scenes from everyday life. But what catches your attention the most is one page in particular. On it there is a map. Not a map of the city, but of something else. Maybe of a refuge. Maybe of a place where people are still trying to rebuild what was lost. You don't know why, but something inside you ignites. A spark of hope, maybe, or just a need to find something to believe in. You decide to pick up the map. You don't know where it will lead you, but you know that somehow it might be an answer, even if it's a small answer, but it's enough to keep you going. You fold the map carefully and put it in your pocket. And as you turn to leave, you realize that the silence that once seemed comforting is now suffocating you. As if the city is watching you, as if you made a mistake by entering this place. You quickly exit the building, and as you take a few more steps onto the street, the feeling of being watched disappears. The fear, however, remains. The fear of what the future may hold, and the fear that the pursuit of survival, no matter how small, will lead you to an even more lonely end. Deep down, you know the map is just a piece of paper, but for some reason, it's more than that. It's a reminder that there's something beyond the death that haunts the city, something beyond the destruction and despair. It's a symbol that even in times of loss and desolation, there's still a possibility, a possible future even if it's far away. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough to keep you going. Historians still wonder about the meaning of the objects left behind during the plague. Some believe they were artifacts from a time gone by, representations of a humanity that tried to preserve what it could. Others suggest that the objects were actually just forms of resistance, fragments of an invisible struggle against fate. And yet, all agree on one thing. They are testimonies to a story that is still being written, a story of survivors who keep going, not because they know where they're going, but because they simply cannot stop. Night has fallen completely, and the city is cloaked in thick darkness, broken only by the shadows cast by the few remaining sources of light. The stars above, which once seemed so small and distant, now shine with a disconcerting intensity. They are your only points of reference amidst the emptiness and desolation. You walk through the streets, the map tucked away in your pocket with no clear destination, but with a strange sense of urgency. There is something inside you that refuses to believe that all is lost. Something inside you stirs, as if the last vestiges of hope are trying to guide you somewhere. The city, as empty as it may seem, is far from silent. There are sounds, not the sounds of people talking, children playing, or cars passing by, but something more subtle. The sound of the wind passing through the cracks in the buildings, the sound of something moving in the shadows, perhaps a creature or just nature trying to reclaim what it has taken. Sometimes you catch yourself looking back, wondering if you are being followed, if there is something behind you. But every time you turn around, there is no one. The city is so quiet that even the sound of your own footsteps seems too much. You look at the map again. The lines drawn on the paper are simple, but their meaning is profound. Each stroke, each curve is a promise of something more. You don't know where that map will take you, but there is something about it that calls to you, and, as much as reason, tells you to be cautious. Something inside you pushes you to move forward. The fear that accompanies you all the time becomes almost imperceptible now, like a shadow that you have grown accustomed to seeing. The truth is that you are afraid, but the only thing you fear more than the unknown is standing still. The fear of having nothing left to do, of simply disappearing without a trace, is what keeps you going. With each step you move further away from the city center and closer to the edges, where the buildings begin to diminish and nature begins to take over. The vegetation, once neglected, now grows freely, covering the ruins of a city that seems to have been abandoned by everyone except those who still insist on resisting. The air, which was once heavy and stuffy, now feels fresher. There is something purifying in the breeze that runs through the trees and the dry leaves, as if nature is trying to cleanse what has been contaminated. You don't know how long you've been walking, but the streets are getting more uneven, the terrain more difficult, and you start to realize that the end of the city is approaching. The map, even though it's a guide, doesn't make much difference now. There are no more landmarks, no more structures to help you find your way around. The city, which once seemed so organized and full of life, is now a tangle of meaningless streets, places you never imagined you'd see. But strangely, you feel more comfortable, as if as you move away from the central chaos, something purer is revealing itself. Finally, you come to a small field, an open area that seems to have been neglected for so long that nature has taken over. A clearing where the grass has grown tall and the flowers are beginning to bloom, albeit with a faded color. From here, you realize that the map begins to make more sense. There is something ahead of you, somewhere beyond the vegetation. You can't quite make it out, but you feel like you're close to something important. A place forgotten by everyone, perhaps, but not by you. As you get closer, the vegetation begins to thin out, and finally, what you see ahead makes your heart race. It is a structure, a building still standing, although worn down by time and lack of care. You approach cautiously, not knowing what to expect. The silence is deep, almost unbearable, but at the same time it is comforting. There are no more shadows of the city, no more echoes of hurried and desperate footsteps. There is only you and this place that, for some reason, seems to have been designed to endure. The door to the structure is ajar, and as you push it open, a creaking sound echoes through the air. You enter, your footsteps muffled by the dust that has covered the floor. The interior, although dark, reveals signs of a more distant past. There are books, maps, and other objects scattered around, as if there was still someone here, someone who in some way tried to keep alive the memory of the world that once was. The walls are covered in drawings and notes, in a language that you cannot fully understand, but that somehow makes you feel at home. Against one wall, a large table is covered with yellowed papers and aged documents. You approach it, touching them gently, as if you fear that the simple act of touching them might undo them. But when you unfold one of the pages, you find something curious, a diary written by hand in a firm handwriting, but which seems to have been done in a hurry. What it contains are accounts, observations of someone who lived through the plague, someone who, like you, sought to understand how to survive, how to resist. With each page you turn, you begin to understand that this building, this refuge, was built by someone who saw what happened and decided to do something about it. They didn't run away. They didn't abandon it. They tried to understand. And somehow that inspires you. You know there's still something to do, something that can still be rebuilt. And maybe that's the first step. Finding what's left, and maybe more importantly, understanding what can still be done. Historians often discuss the traces left by those who lived during the plague. Some suggest that the survivors were simply one face of the destruction, of little importance in the global context. Others, however, believe that the true heroes were those who, amidst the chaos, found ways to preserve knowledge, culture, and lessons for future generations. What is certain, however, is that these traces, whether large or small, are testimonies of a humanity that refuses to disappear. They are proof that despite everything, the drive to rebuild never completely disappears. The silence of the building is now almost palpable. You are still standing at the table with the papers and the diary spread out before you. The light that enters through the small window makes the scene more melancholy than it would be if there were more light. You still feel the pressure on your chest, as if the weight of loneliness, of the unknown, and of the history of what happened before you arrived here is trying to reach you. But there is something about it all, something about the notes and the yellowed pages that makes you feel for a brief moment less alone. The words in the diary speak of resistance, of a silent struggle against what seemed inevitable. The writer, whoever he was, meticulously documented the days following the arrival of the plague, but he also sought to maintain his humanity within himself, trying to find beauty in it, even though he was often surrounded by darkness. At first, he described the days as a whirlwind, a series of moments that followed one another without any structure. Fear seemed to be constant, and people ran for cover, but they were also in many cases unaware of the gravity of what was happening around them. Resist. Resist until the end comes, you read on one of the pages. The phrase is simple, but loaded with profound meaning. It is not a cry of victory. It is not a call to epic action. It is simply an acceptance that, even when all seems lost, resistance is a primary necessity. But at the same time, one cannot expect this resistance to be glorious. It is, in fact, quite silent and often solitary, as if it were the simple act of continuing, without making much fuss, without expecting recognition, as if resistance were, in fact, in the capacity to be insignificant and, at the same time, to allow oneself to exist in the midst of immeasurable chaos. You ponder this as you scroll through the journal, more pages turning with a mixture of fascination and dismay. The words become more dissonant, more shallow with time, as if the writer, as the days passed, became more disconnected from the world. There was less hope in the words and more notes about pure survival, like recording the things necessary to continue existing. Food, shelter, safety, the nature of the human being, reduced to its most basic needs. What he wrote was not so different from the way you acted now. The difference, perhaps, is the lack of clear writing about what comes next. What happens when there is nothing left to hope for? You begin to understand that what remains, what really matters, are the little things, the gestures, the simple moments of taking care of the body and mind. Survival becomes a routine in itself. This is what the writer over time captured. The idea that survival was more than a fight against what had happened. It was also about refusing to be consumed by what you couldn't control. The refusal to be defeated by the simple idea that the end is inevitable. This reality, reflected in the pages of the diary, resonates with you. Each sentence written there seems to be a reflection of your own journey, a journey that does not require a glorious destination, but only that you keep moving forward. Perhaps the true victory is not in escaping or finding a safe haven, but simply in continuing to walk, a journey that will never have a finish line, but that somehow leads you back to yourself, allows you to find some peace, even in the midst of chaos. As time passes and you become more familiar with the diary, an idea begins to form in your mind. The place where you are now, what you have found there, is not a simple shelter or refuge. It is a point of connection. The story of the writer you are reading may actually be the story of everyone who survived that. A cycle of attempts, of failures, but also of persistence. This connects with the memory of what was, but also with the search for what may yet come. A search that is not only for survival, but for meaning, even if that meaning is just to continue existing. You carefully put the journal back and decide to leave the small shelter. The map is still in your pocket, and something inside you tells you that it has more to offer. The field around the structure is immense, but you no longer feel lost. You feel that the journey that began by chance now has a purpose, even if it is a simple purpose. The search is not for something big, something grandiose, but for something genuine, for a little clarity amidst the whirlwind of destruction. As you walk to the edge of the clearing, the vegetation around you seems more alive than ever. The air, even though dense and heavy, has something invigorating about it. Sometimes it feels like the world is trying to rebuild itself at its own pace, with a quiet force that you, even in your fragility, begin to understand. Maybe it's not about finding a happy ending. Maybe there is no happy ending to be found anymore. But continuity, the simple fact of moving forward, is still a kind of victory. And as you move forward, you feel that this is more than enough. There is no rush. Time, which once seemed like an enemy, now seems like something more malleable. You don't need to rush anything. In the end, you know that you will continue, that no matter where the map takes you, your journey will continue. The rest, what happens along the way, will be decided in the moment. But one thing, one certainty, is already clear. You are no longer searching for something lost. You are searching perhaps for a new way of being, a new way of understanding what is around you. Historians, when analyzing survivors' diaries, often get lost in their search for definitive answers. Some look for a clear message, a universal teaching that can be applied to humanity as a whole. But the truth is that when reading these accounts, it becomes clear that what really mattered was not definitive answers, but the persistence in searching. Searching until the end. Even without knowing where it would lead. The night seems to drag on disconcertingly as you continue your journey. The sky, now filled with heavy clouds, creates an impenetrable cover, and the darkness around you is thick as a blanket that envelops you. However, you no longer feel the same sense of despair that once overwhelmed you. There is something deeply comforting about walking in this darkness, in knowing that even though the world around you has been destroyed, it still retains the ability to offer something simple. The peace of solitude. It is almost as if the fact that everything is in ruins somehow makes the silence deeper, more acceptable. The city that once seemed full of noise and haste is now a shadow of its former self, and you cannot help but feel that somehow the shadows have something to offer you. The map, still tucked away in your pocket, now feels more like a guide to something far away, something you don't fully understand. Every step you take, every turn you make, feels like a decision of no great importance. A walk that follows the rhythm of a song you're still trying to learn to play. The map no longer guides you, it just lets you keep going. And maybe that's what you need right now. Permission to move forward, to not think about what could have been or what could still be, to just be. You reach a point where the vegetation begins to thin out, and the city, or what's left of it, begins to appear once more on the horizon. The buildings are sparse and in ruins, but there are signs of life here and there. Small vegetable gardens scattered about, flowers beginning to grow where there used to be asphalt. Pieces of wood and metal being used to build what seems to be an attempt to rebuild some kind of community. The people you meet there don't talk much, but there's a silent understanding between them. They know what you've been through, they know what the plague did, and somehow that creates an instant connection. Among these people you notice an older figure, a man with white hair and an expression of wisdom that seems unattainable. He is sitting on a wooden bench, observing the people around him with a gaze that seems to capture more than just physical movement. He notices you almost immediately, his eyes landing on you with a calm curiosity, as if he knows exactly what you are looking for. You approach him, and the man smiles softly. You're looking for something, aren't you? The question is simple, but the way he asks it makes you feel like he knows exactly what you're looking for. Not answers, not certainties, but just something that might still make sense in this chaos. Maybe it's something he himself has lost, or maybe it's something he's found. You don't know, but you feel like you need to keep the conversation going. Yes, you reply, the word coming out of your mouth more on impulse than thought. I'm looking for a purpose, something that makes all of this worth it. The man looks at the horizon where the sun begins to rise, illuminating the ruins with a soft golden light. Sometimes it's just the simple act of going that makes it worth it. There's no clear purpose, but you'll find something along the way. Life, it goes on one way or another. The question is no longer what happened, but what do we do now? Because the plague is not the end. It's just a pause, a break in the flow of things. You watch the man, his words resonating within you. There is something wise in them, something that makes you feel that maybe, just maybe, you were too hasty in seeking a definitive answer. Maybe the answer is simply to move on, to keep going. Because after all, there is nothing left to lose except the time wasted in chasing something that cannot be achieved. Have you found your purpose yet? You ask, even though you know the answer is perhaps too personal. The man smiles again, a sad but serene smile. I have found mine, he says softly, but my purpose is not universal. Each of us must find our own path. The important thing is that, contrary to what many people think, the plague did not erase everything. It only erased what was unimportant. What matters, what has always mattered, is what we have now, what we can still do with what is left. What he says stays with you as you walk away. He didn't give you any clear answers, but somehow he helped you understand something fundamental. It's not about understanding what happened or finding answers to the pain. It's just about moving on. Moving on because life, as devastating as it has been, hasn't stopped. And maybe that's what you still need to do. Move on without looking back, without trying to understand everything, but accepting what remains and finding some kind of comfort in the process. You keep walking, without a clear destination, but with something that now seems more real than any certainty. The understanding that perhaps there is no definitive answer. Perhaps all you can do is follow. And in the end, that is enough. The old man spoke the truth. Perhaps the purpose you seek is not something that can be achieved all at once, but rather something you discover along the way. And even if the future remains uncertain, the journey itself has the power to transform what seems like a meaningless existence into something more, something possible, something real. Historians still wonder about the meaning of the small communities that sprang up after the plague. Some believe they were a direct response to fear and despair, others an attempt to rebuild what was lost. But perhaps the real answer lies in persistence. The simple act of trying, of continuing, is the most profound mark left by those who survived. And that, perhaps, is what matters most. You can no longer tell the difference between time and space. Each day seems to merge into the next, creating a sense of continuity, as if the clock no longer has the same importance it once did. Sometimes you wake up and don't know if it's a new morning, or if you're still caught up in the remnants of the previous night. The sky, which once seemed like a clear reference point, is now a shifting canvas, always full of clouds or a soft glow, creating a sense of uncertainty that stays with you all the time. But somehow you've learned to accept this uncertainty. You walk once again without a clear destination. Each step you take is lighter than the last, as if the weight of decisions and doubts had been lifted over time. Your mind, now calmer, begins to process everything that has happened, everything you have seen. The city that once seemed like a maze of ruins is now a more familiar, almost welcoming place. The people, with their small communities and their forms of resistance, seem less distant. They are no longer the strangers you found by force. They are survivors, just like you, trying to find their place in what is left of the world. As you walk through the city trails, you come across the old and the white-haired man sitting on a wooden bench. He watches you with a calm gaze, almost as if he has been waiting for your return. You approach him unhurriedly, knowing that there is no urgency in his words or gestures. Time no longer exists as it once did, and the conversation between you is like a pause in the endless flow of events. You're calmer now, he says, his tone soft, almost as if it were a simple fact. So that's good. Sometimes life requires us to slow down to understand what really matters. You sit beside him, looking out at what's left of the city in the distance. The buildings are farther away now, more covered by vegetation and time, but there are still signs of life, small sparks of humanity resisting abandonment. "You're right," you reply. "I don't know what I was looking for anymore, maybe I never knew." The old man smiles softly. "Don't worry about it. Nobody knows. In the end, it's not about finding something big and grand, but about finding what keeps us going. What keeps us going even when there's nothing clear ahead." What he says resonates with you in a strange way. It's not a grand revelation. It's not an answer that clarifies everything you still wonder about, but it's a quiet peace. He doesn't tell you what to do. He doesn't offer you a solution to every problem, but simply reminds you that the search is constant and that along the way you'll find little pieces of truth. Sometimes those pieces are just the simplest gestures, like sharing a meal with someone or sitting in silence next to a stranger, knowing that in that moment you share the same emptiness, the same pain. "You know," he continues, "historians still wonder why some people survived and others didn't. Some believe it was just luck, or the chance of being in the right place at the right time. Others suggest there was something in the hearts of these people that made them endure longer than others. But the truth is, if you look for a clear explanation, you'll end up lost. It's not about why some survived, but about what kept them going afterwards. That's what really matters." You remain silent, absorbing his words. They are not easy answers. They are simply an acknowledgement that the struggle continues, that even without fully understanding, the simple fact of continuing to walk is already a victory. The old man slowly stands up with a smile on his face. "I know there is still a lot to be done, but perhaps for today the most important thing is to remember that the simple act of existing, of continuing to take a step, is already significant." He gives you a quiet wave, and you watch him disappear into the vegetation. There are no grand goodbyes, no promises of a better tomorrow, but there is the certainty that the path continues. What will become of you in the future? It doesn't matter so much now. What matters is the movement. What matters is that you haven't stopped. You remain there alone for a while, but with a sense of serenity that begins to take over your entire being. The city continues to expand in front of you, but now you see it with different eyes. It is no longer a place of destruction and death, but a place of resilience. A place where every piece of land and every ruin tells a story. A story that is told not by words, but by the actions of those who insist on continuing. And so even with no clear end in sight, you know that true purpose lies not in what has been lost, but in what can still be found. The future doesn't have to be something grand. Sometimes it's simply the next step. Historians debate how survivors of the plague managed to rebuild their lives. They try to explain, in theories and studies, what happened in those dark years. But perhaps what matters, most what scholars can never capture, is the simple fact that survivors kept going. And perhaps that is enough. As you walk through the city, a feeling of familiarity begins to settle in your chest. The sounds, the soft voices echoing in the distance, the small makeshift buildings and even the shy laughter of the people seem to form a kind of harmony. It is a harmony with a touch of sadness, it is true, but there is also something deeply human in all of this. A collective effort to rebuild what was left, or perhaps an attempt to create something new, something that is at least closer to what people needed to survive. The city, once a place of desolation, now displays discrete signs of life, of attempts and courage. You can see it in every gesture, in every corner where someone tries to cultivate the land, or in every furtive glance between those who strive to preserve something that perhaps not even they know what it is. You realize that you are no longer just walking through the ruins. You are truly integrating. People have begun to recognize you and, more importantly, to accept you. They no longer ask where you came from or what you did before you got here. That no longer matters. What matters now is the simple fact that everyone shares a common destiny, the will to live, to continue, to resist. Perhaps that is the true essence of survival. It is not the fact of being alive, but the ability to resist emptiness, despair, and still find something to hold on to. In the city's makeshift market, you notice a woman selling small vegetables. They're not much, but they're enough to sustain people for another day. She offers you a shy smile as you approach, and without saying much, you realize that she doesn't expect anything in return. There's no bargaining here, no interest in profit, just sharing what you have, what's left. This simple gesture, this small moment of generosity, reminds you that despite everything, there are still things that haven't been destroyed. There's a humanity that persists. The woman doesn't know your story and you don't know hers, but in that moment she offers you a little hope. You leave the market with some food in hand and decide to walk through the streets that are beginning to be rebuilt. You see people gathered in small groups, repairing roofs, painting walls, fixing what they can. There is an effort to give the city a new face, a new life. They don't know if it will work, if it will be enough, but deep down, that doesn't matter either. What matters is the action, the ability to get up again, even when hope seemed to have been buried under tons of ash. You realize that when you look at those people, something inside you begins to change. You are no longer just observing others. You are becoming part of it. As you walk along, you come across a group of children playing in what remains of a park. Their laughter is loud and carefree, as if nothing has changed. They are running, pushing each other, challenging each other to jump over small, makeshift obstacles. You watch them for a moment, not realizing that you are smiling. The smile is involuntary. It is the first genuine smile you have given in a long time. There is something about children that makes the world suddenly seem simpler. They do not know about the plague, about what has happened or what may come. They just play as if the present is all that matters. And maybe that is it. Maybe that is the key to survival. Finding the ability to live in the moment without letting the weight of the past or the fear of the future define what you do now. You feel a lightness in your heart, a feeling you haven't felt in a long time. Maybe it's the presence of these children, or maybe it's simply seeing the people around you trying to make a new beginning. You don't know, and maybe you don't even need to know. You realize that life, even in its darkest circumstances, still has something to offer. It's not big, it's not grand, but it's enough. It's what's here and now, and for now that's enough. Time, which once seemed endless and full of uncertainty, now feels more like a peaceful companion. You begin to understand that the answers you seek are not given all at once, but rather revealed in small pieces, in daily gestures, in the way you relate to others and the world around you. There is no longer a search for grand meaning. There is only the meaning found in continuing, in doing what you can, in holding on to the small moments of beauty that still exist. As the day turns into night, you find a quiet place to sit, watching the city that now seems to have found its own rhythm again. The lights in the houses, even though dim, begin to come on, and you feel a kind of comfort in knowing that, even with all the uncertainty that still hangs over the future, life goes on, no matter what, no matter how long it takes. The important thing is that despite everything, it goes on. You feel like you have something more to learn, something more to experience. It's not a definitive answer about what happened or what's yet to come, but the certainty that if you keep moving forward, the answers will come. They may be small, they may be subtle, but in the end, maybe that's what matters. Moving forward without rushing, without pressure, allowing time to reveal itself at its own pace. Historians can debate for centuries the details of what happened, why the plague came and how it changed everything. But the truth is that the most important thing is not the explanations they try to give, but the resilience of those who survived. Those who, despite everything, found a way to continue, to build, to live. And that perhaps is the greatest testimony of all. Night approaches, bringing with it a blanket of coolness that alleviates the heat of the day. The sky is now clearer. The stars begin to align, although a little timidly. The city streets are quieter, but not in a frightening way, but rather in a peaceful way, as if the world has slowed down and now just breathes gently, in a calm and steady rhythm. For a moment, you lose yourself in the scenery around you. The sounds of the night are subtle, almost as if time has stretched, making everything softer, more pleasant. You find a bench, simple but comfortable, and sit there looking up at the stars. You don't know what you're looking for, but something inside you feels like this is the right place to reflect, to simply be. Suddenly, the weight of the hours, days, and weeks that have passed seems to lift a little. The city, which once seemed like a battlefield, now appears as a space of possibilities. Life, with all its ups and downs, goes on. And somehow, You begin to realize that there is beauty in the little things, in the simple attempts to move forward as a. You gaze up at the sky. You begin to think about the people you met along the way, the wise old man, the children playing, the woman at the market. Each of them with their small gestures brought you a little clarity, not ready-made answers, but small fragments of understanding. Life, after all, goes on. And perhaps that is the most surprising thing of all, the simple fact that we are still here, not by willpower or extraordinary merits, but by sheer persistence. Because perhaps that is the greatest strength of human beings, the ability to get up when all seems lost, the ability to continue without a clear map, without knowing where the journey will take us. You close your eyes for a moment and let the sound of the wind wash over you. The breeze, cool and gentle, is like a reminder of a calmer time, a time when you didn't have to worry about what has happened or what will come. Sometimes, all you need to do is simply let the moment unfold, without rushing. It brings you a sense of peace, a sense that in the end you are not alone on this journey. Everyone has their own stories, their own challenges, and together somehow, you're all trying to make something meaningful out of what is left. You think then about how life has a tendency to move forward, even when there seems to be no reason for it to. The plague brought death, desolation, but it also brought something deeper. It brought the strength to carry on, the ability to look to the future, even if that future is cloudy. And this strength, you realize, does not come from a major event, a major external change. It comes from the ability of each of us to take the next step, to keep going, even when there are no guarantees, even when everything around us says it is not possible. Thinking gives you a new perspective on what it means to live. It's not about achieving a grand goal or finding the answer to every question. It's not about understanding what happened or trying to plan for what's to come. Life is about moving on, about breathing, about looking around and finding beauty in what remains, in what can be rebuilt. It's not about avoiding mistakes or failures, but about being able to get up after each one, to try again, even if you don't know exactly what you're trying to achieve. The wind pauses and everything is still for a moment. This silence, without the pressure of tomorrow or the demands of the world, envelops you. You take a deep breath and realize that perhaps true power lies in simply being present, here, now, where things happen, without rushing, without demands, without the weight of what has already happened or what is yet to come. Just the now. In one of your reveries, you recall a curious but perhaps comforting fact. Even in times of catastrophe, there have always been those who have managed to find small moments of beauty in the chaos. There are records of people who, after great tragedies such as wars and plagues, would gather to share stories or songs. They spoke not of the suffering, but of what was left, of what they could do to create a moment of light in the midst of the darkness. Historians still wonder why these small traditions persisted, but you begin to understand the way in which these small acts of humanity help to keep people's spirits alive. Perhaps it is not about erasing suffering, but about acknowledging it and at the same time finding ways to move forward. Now in the silence of the night you feel a connection to those who came before, to all those who survived immense tragedies and found in the simplicity of daily existence a reason to carry on. The fact that we are here today is a testament to that, because even when the world seems to be falling apart, life, that immense and unpredictable force, always finds a way to carry on. You start to get up from the bench feeling that time is somehow an ally. It is no longer something to be mastered, but something to be respected. Sometimes all you have to do is take it one step at a time, and maybe that is what makes it so amazing. The idea that even without knowing where we are going, we are still going. As you walk away, you look up at the stars once more. They're there, steady and distant, just as they always have been. And somehow it comforts you to know that while the world around you continues to change, there are things that remain. There's always something to hold on to. They may not be definitive answers, but they are signs like these stars that show us the way, even when we can't see the end. The morning arrives slowly, as if time itself wants to give everyone a chance to recover from the shadows of the night. You wake up to the soft light that begins to invade the city, but instead of rushing, there is a kind of calm that envelops the new day. The morning air is fresh and you feel a different energy in the air. The streets, which yesterday seemed empty and desolate, are now beginning to fill with people again, everyone returning to their rhythm, although without the urgency that once existed. You get up and start walking without a clear destination, just allowing yourself to follow. The city is no longer a completely strange place. You have adapted to it just as it has adapted to you. And although the marks of the past are still evident in every corner, every piece of broken stone, something new begins to emerge. A new kind of life. It is not rushed, it is not intense, but it is enough. It is a constant movement without rushing to get anywhere, but with the certainty that as long as you keep walking, something will be found. You look at the faces of the people around you. Some are tired, others seem lighter, but they all share the same silent desire to move on. Somewhere at some point everyone got lost, but now they are trying to find themselves again, each in their own unique way. They don't say much, but their gestures are enough. The way they help each other, the way they share the little they have. There are no big words of hope, but there are silent actions that somehow convey much more than any grand speech could. The city, which seemed like a place of eternal suffering, now has a new sense of community. It may not be the same community it once was, but it is a community that has risen from the ashes, a community that does not care about rebuilding what was lost, but about building something new. You see people working together, moving what was left of the old buildings to create new structures, makeshift ones perhaps, but which serve as a symbol of what is possible when you have a purpose. It is not a perfect world, nor a city restored to its original state, but it is something, and that already seems like more than enough. As you walk through the streets, you meet the wise old man again. He is sitting on a bench, as always, with a calm and observant look. He sees you approaching, and there is a slight curve at the corners of his mouth, as if he has been waiting for you, without saying a word. You sit down next to him again, without rushing, as if the simple fact of being there is already part of the process. Have you noticed the difference, he asks, without looking at you directly. He means the city, the life that is being reborn before his eyes. You think for a moment before answering. Yes, I don't know what's going on, but something is changing. The city, the people. It feels like somehow everyone is trying to do something. It's not grand, but it's real. The old man nods as if he already knows the answer, but is waiting for you to realize it for yourself. This is what happens when people start to realize that what was lost doesn't have to be the end. What's left can be the beginning of something new, something that they may not even know what it is, but it's enough to keep going. His words carry a weight that touches you deeply. Sometimes it's hard to notice the change as it happens, but now looking at the city, you see that the transformation is already underway. What once seemed like an empty space is now filling with life, with small everyday actions. The marks of the past do not disappear, but they are now accompanied by new signs of resistance, of silent strength. The old man is right. It's not about rebuilding what was lost, but about creating something new with what's left. Do you think this will last, you ask? Not sure if you're asking about the city, the people, or yourself. Maybe the answer lies somewhere in between. He smiles gently. Life has a funny way of going on no matter what. Things may not be the way they were before, but that doesn't mean they can't be good. Sometimes what remains after a great destruction, there's just the chance to start over, to rebuild what was broken in ways we might never have imagined before. You look at him, feeling a quiet peace, as if his words are more than just comfort, but an essential truth. There are no guarantees of success, no definitive answer as to what will come, but there is possibility. There is a chance to somehow move forward, to continue the journey no matter what happens. The sun begins to rise higher in the sky, and the city is filled with a golden light. It is a new day. It may not be the beginning of something great, but it is the beginning of something. And that for now is enough. The truth is that you don't know what will come, but you are willing to continue one step at a time. The old man slowly stands up, stretching his legs, and gives you a slight nod. The journey continues, my friend. Remember, it's not where you go, but how you walk. He walks away and you stay there, with the feeling that perhaps what you were looking for all along was not an answer, but the ability to move on, to walk, to live, even when everything around you seemed to be falling apart. You take a deep breath, feeling the fresh morning air in your lungs. The city is still rebuilding, but you're beginning to understand that perhaps the secret to survival isn't going back to the way it was, but finding a new way to live. And as you get up from the bench and move forward, that sense of possibility follows you, gently, like the morning wind. The heat of the day begins to take hold of the city as the sun rises higher in the sky. The morning, with its comforting coolness, gives way to a more muggy and intense climate. But this doesn't seem to bother the people. In fact, there is something admirable about the way they go about their daily tasks, undeterred by the challenges that life has brought. It is as if, with each step they take, the city is slowly rebuilding itself, not only physically, but spiritually as well. The air is warm, but the feeling is that something important is happening, something that cannot be interrupted by small difficulties. You start walking through the busiest streets of the city. This time, there are more people in the squares, more conversations, more laughter, more gestures. The makeshift shops along the streets have small signs offering services or products that, although simple, are proof that people are not just waiting to see what the future holds for them. They are acting, they are creating, they are taking control of their own existence in a way that is both moving and inspiring. It is a place of reinvention, not a grandiose reinvention, but one that happens little by little, in each act of kindness, in each collective movement. Maybe that is what you notice most now. The small actions, the joint effort, the small daily victories that are more meaningful than any grand plan or project. People don't talk about changing the world. They talk about planting a seed, about taking a step, about helping someone with what you have, and maybe that is enough. You find yourself back in front of the main square. The old man you met earlier is no longer there, but the children are still playing around, their laughter echoing in the warm afternoon air. They have energy and joy in abundance, as if nothing could steal it from them. And somehow, you feel that the city itself is becoming lighter, more cheerful, more alive. Not that the pain has completely disappeared, but it is now accompanied by something new, by something that perhaps was forgotten in the old days. The feeling that there is always something to be done, something to be achieved, something to be celebrated. You watch a man and a woman discussing something very animatedly. It doesn't seem like a fight, but rather a passionate debate about how best to cultivate the land, about how to deal with the scarcity of resources. They are old acquaintances, and their conversations, although intense, are full of mutual respect. In other circumstances, you might look at this discussion with a critical eye, but now you see it as part of the reconstruction process. These are conversations, gestures, decisions that, although small, are weaving the future of the city. It is these moments, these small challenges and solutions, that form the foundation of something new, something more resilient, more solid, more real. You begin to understand that true transformation does not happen in great leaps, but in small actions that accumulate over time. Every movement, every step taken by the people of the city creates a new narrative, a new story, one that is not about loss but about rebirth. The plague may have brought death and pain, but it also brought a unique opportunity, the chance to start over, to learn from what was lost and build something that is perhaps stronger, more resilient, more adapted to the present reality. The afternoon slowly progresses and you feel like you've covered a good part of the city, but there's still more to see. The heat of the day is at its peak, but you don't rush. There's no need to. You know that, just like the wind that begins to blow lightly through the streets, everything will follow its own rhythm. There's no more urgency, no more rush. The simple fact that you're here is already a sign that things are moving forward, that life is back on track. You find a small square where a few people are sitting, talking. Among them is a man you have never seen before. He has a calm demeanor, but his expression is that of someone who carries a deep wisdom, an understanding that is reflected in the calm gaze he gives to others. He seems to be an observer, someone who has been through something very big, but who still maintains the ability to connect with the people around him. You approach him with the curiosity that always arises when you meet someone new, someone who seems to have something to say. The man looks at you, and for a moment, his eyes seem to study you almost silently. There is no judgment, just a calm acceptance, as if he knows exactly what you are feeling. He smiles, and without saying anything, right away he begins to speak softly, as if his words are a reminder of something very simple, but deeply true. You know, he begins, life is not about what you lose, but about what you can do with what's left. We all have something to offer, even if we don't realize it sometimes. The important thing is not to try to go back to the way things were, but to find the strength to start over. And that's what really matters. His words echo in your mind as if they were spoken to you in an almost personal way. The man doesn't know about your journey, but something in his words resonates with you, with what you've been experiencing in the last few days. He speaks of new beginnings, of fresh starts, of finding value in what remains. And you understand, he's not talking about rebuilding what was lost, but about rebuilding what we can be in the now, in the present. The man slowly stands up and gives you a slight nod, as if he has said everything that needed to be said. And although he does not elaborate on this, you feel that his words have touched you deeply. He walks away, disappearing into the crowd of people who continue their lives unhurriedly, without great expectations, but with an unmistakable feeling that, despite everything, something good is happening. You take a deep breath, and as you continue your walk through the city streets, you realize that the journey, however difficult it may have been, has brought you something valuable, something that, however simple it may seem, now seems to be what really matters. It's not about what was lost. It's not about the answers you still seek. It's about how you will move forward into the future, how you will react to what remains. And with that thought, you move forward. The sun is about to set, and the city, which during the day seemed frantic and full of movement, begins to calm down. The soft evening light bathes the streets and buildings in a golden hue, making everything seem more beautiful, more peaceful, as if the world had softened a little. The heat of the day is still felt, but now there is a pleasant breeze that eases the tension, like a light hug, the feeling that things are, somehow, settling down. You find yourself back in the main square, where it all began. The city around you is no longer the same as it was when you first found it. People are still out on the streets, some sitting on benches, others chatting animatedly. But there is a sense that everyone is more at peace, more aware of their own stories and the paths they took to get here. It is as if, deep down, everyone knew that life would not be perfect, but that it was moving forward, and that was enough. There was no need to understand everything or solve all the problems at once. What mattered was the simple fact of continuing, of taking small steps each day. You sit on a bench unhurriedly and observe the scene before you. The pace of the people seems slower, calmer. There is no great commotion, but there is life. You wonder if people really know what has been achieved in these last few days, these last few months. Do they feel the weight of the changes that have occurred? Or is it that, like everything in life, the process of transformation is something that happens slowly, without even those who are experiencing it noticing? You start to reflect on your own journey. It's no longer about finding definitive answers or understanding all the mysteries of the world. It's not about understanding the reasons behind the plague, the destruction, or the difficult times you've faced. It's just about being here, about continuing, about walking without knowing exactly where the road will take you. Sometimes, what matters is not the final destination, but what you learn along the way. The city, with all its inhabitants, its streets, its problems, and its improvised solutions, teaches you something simple and profound. It is not about avoiding pain or mistakes, but about knowing that they are part of the process. Perhaps the greatest lesson is that living is not about achieving a final state of perfection or constant happiness. Living is about accepting imperfections, learning to deal with them and continuing on the path, despite everything. It is about looking at what has been destroyed and knowing that, even in what remains, there is something precious to be rebuilt. You close your eyes for a moment and breathe deeply, letting the fresh evening air envelop you. The feeling of peace that has taken hold of you is comforting. The doubts and uncertainties you once carried now seem smaller, more distant. You have learned that, even without answers, life goes on. Even without a clear map, it is possible to Continue one step at a time. In the distance, the sound of a piano begins to play softly. It's not a grand or triumphant melody, but something simple, something that seems to reflect the spirit of the city right now. A song that speaks of resilience, of the beauty that can emerge even in the most difficult moments. The piano continues to play soft and quiet, filling the space with a serenity that fits the moment perfectly. You get up still feeling like there's something special about the day. The city lights start to come on one by one, and night approaches, bringing with it a welcoming silence. But before you leave, you take one more look around. The city, with all its scars and reconstructions, is still alive. People continue to walk, work, talk. The movement is constant, but now there's a sense of calm in the air, a sense that peace is within reach, even if it's not perfect. Perhaps this is the most important thing of all. Life, with all its difficulties and uncertainties, goes on, and as you walk down the street, one step at a time, you realize that the most precious thing is not what you hope to achieve, but what you have already achieved simply by continuing. The eager sound of the piano fades gently like the approaching night, and with that, you feel that somehow the cycle is closing. There is no more need to rush, no more need to seek definitive answers. There is only the present moment, and in the silence that accompanies it, you feel that everything will be okay. Now, as the city prepares for the night's rest, you also feel a sense of quiet exhaustion, as if the simple fact of having lived the day with all its challenges and achievements is enough. It doesn't matter what tomorrow brings. You have already learned how to walk, and that is what really matters.